As we bring up Kevin Syracuse to the show, we welcome him on now. And we are still live in the middle of this debate, as Mike just brought up, a Mike Bunt rant of his kind of interpretation of the Bills' offense and what's going on, the state of the league around the league. Kevin, I know you were obviously down there, interacting. What are your opinions on what Mike was able to say about how Josh definitely makes any offensive coordinator good, but at the same time, you have to roll with his limitations of what formations he likes, some of the wild throws, and some of the schemes he likes. Does he like screen passes? There's so much there that you have to digest in order to mesh an offensive scheme to the style of quarterback. So you heard it from Mike, Kevin. I know you have thoughts on it. What are you thinking as you kind of look through this debate?
Yeah, I agree with what you guys were saying. And I think it's important that we look at both sides, because I feel like way too many times in Bills Mafia, whether it's on social media or podcasts or just in general, it's either you love Ken Dorsey or you hate him. And there's no in between. And I think that we need to criticize him and Josh and the rest of the offense as a whole, especially after a performance like that. I think we need to examine everyone and everything. This wasn't on Ken Dorsey. This wasn't just on Josh. This wasn't just on Khalil Shakir. I'm just throwing a random name out there. So that's what I want to try doing here tonight, because I try to stay on the middle, because, whoever reporter was that said, hey, Sean, is Ken Dorsey going to be calling plays moving forward? I mean, come on, that's obvious. You're not going to strip him during the middle of the season. If anything, if it's that bad, you make the change at the end of the year. So I'm going to try staying in the middle, because I think it's important that we look on both sides here. And something that I found really interesting was what Eric Wood was saying on WGR yesterday. And I want to bring this up here because I think he put it perfectly. So he said, since the Bills have taken Allen's running out of their offense, there needs to be a quick, easy option 5 to 7 yards down the field to get some rhythm into their offense and to help move the chains. You have to find that safety blanket. So whether it's getting Kincaid more involved once he's healthy, using Hardy, Sherfield, and or Shakir more, or utilizing Cook in the passing game, the Bills need some quick, easy throws to make it third and manageable as opposed to third and long. So I thought that was a perfect way of putting it, because I think it starts at the top with Ken Dorsey. Can he be better? Absolutely. I think he needs to put his weapons in better positions so that you can get that rhythm and the balance into your offense. Because I was looking at the stats today. Roy will appreciate this. Khalil Shakir and Trent Sherfield have combined for 12 targets, 9 receptions, and just 79 yards and a touchdown this season. So I'm not saying that these are guys that need to put up 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, but you signed them for a reason. You drafted Kincaid for a reason. And I know he was hurt with that concussion, but Kincaid only has 17 receptions for 118 yards this year. You got to find ways to get these guys more involved. So before I talk about Josh a little bit, I'll let you guys respond to that.
Yeah, and I agree a lot with what you were saying there, Kevin. And that's kind of where I stand. I don't think that Dorsey is a top 5 offensive coordinator. I just don't agree with the people that are like, fire Dorsey and that this guy is horrible. Across league circles, he's considered a top 10 offensive coordinator in the game right now. That's not just me throwing things out there. If you go to PFF guys, if you go to other national media guys that have sources, he's a guy that's going to start getting interviews for head coaching opportunities in the next few years, whether he gets those jobs or not. And while we can all say it's a product of Josh Allen, the same could be said about Brian Dable. We will never actually know how much of it is the offensive coordinator and how much of it is Josh Allen until Josh Allen is no longer in the mix, or if the offensive coordinator goes to another organization and then has to coach another team. So we're never really going to know that answer. And it's important to look at the alternatives too. If the Bills ever did get rid of a Ken Dorsey, Joe Brady is probably the next guy in charge. So then you're going to have just the same issue again, except for now you have a quarterback coach that's been with the team for a shorter period of time overall. So what I think we struggle sometimes as fans is we always say we want them to do certain things. Then they do it. And then if they don't have instant success doing it, we get upset. The Bills are trying to become a more balanced offense this year. They're trying to implement 12 personnel. They're trying to run the ball more because they're realizing with the way defenses have adjusted over the last year or two that they need more balance in order to be successful in the playoffs and to be able to try to make a run. And we've seen James Cook elevate the Bills running game this year. We've seen Latavius Murray have success out of the backfield. Last week on the show, Kevin, you were Cuse, you were talking about how you wanted to see the Bills more under center. You wanted to see more play action. Well, they went up to 43% of their snaps under center this past week. They went to 25% play action. So the Bills really are incorporating new things. But it's also important to consider when you are incorporating new things in your offense, things that you haven't done much in recent years, it's not going to just come instantaneously to you. There's going to be a growth period. There's going to be rough stretches with that as well. The Bills aren't trying to just throw all this out there because they expect to just be amazing at it right away. This is about growth and progression through the course of a season. So when it gets to the end of the year, they can have the right mentality to where they can have success doing these new things. What really kind of failed this team in previous years was that they were so strong with their core philosophies that when teams had answers for them, they really didn't have a multitude of ways to really attack teams. The Bills were heavy 11 personnel last year, and when they came against teams that were able to slow them down like the Jets and the Bengals, it was tough sledding the rest of the way. I'd rather the struggles come right now, trying to find out your identity and figure out if these new things are going to work out for you long term, than to get to the playoffs having had amazing regular season success with 11 personnel, then run into the one opponent that can slow you down, and then having no alternatives the rest of the game. So long story short, we'll see how it works out. But they're still averaging 29 points a game, which coincidentally is more points than they were averaging last year and the same amount of points they averaged the 2 years prior with Dable during a historic period in the NFL.
Or I think what you're looking at here too is their ability to continue to thrive statistically. And I think that bugs people because it's like, well, there's got to be a solution because I don't see it that way. I see it differently. I see it as just Josh. And I think the problem where you're starting to find that divide that Kevin mentioned earlier is because you have people who might not want to hear that the stats have anything to do with anyone other than Josh Allen. So I think that that's the biggest divide right now among fans is it Josh? Is it a little bit of both? What's going on? Because a lot of metrics, third best DVOA team, 4-2 team ever. So there's a lot of dramatic opinions right now on the situation. And I think, as always, people needed how many years? 3, 4, 5 years on Josh Allen before saying he's good. Like it was something egregious.
Dable too. So like it's one of those things like when things don't click, fans look for a scapegoat in that situation, and they're not going to scapegoat the all-pro franchise quarterback because he's not going anywhere the next 10 years. Right. So it's who's it easier to scapegoat? The coach who is just continuing what the prior coaches have done, or the quarterback that you're really dependent on for your success going forward? And it kind of is what it is at this point in time, Kevin. And like one thing that like does have to be taken into account too, Bills fans keep saying something looks off with the offense, something looks off with Josh, and it is true. But they have only failed to score 20 points 5 times in their last 22 games. Cincinnati is at 7 for that stretch of games. The Eagles and 49ers, I believe, are at 3 or 4. And same with Kansas City. So even their peer teams are lined up basically in the same areas that the Bills are. So I think what we're kind of experiencing is a victim of we are hyper Bills fans where we watch a million Bills games, but we don't watch enough of the other teams in the league because the same stuff is happening to all the other great teams in the league at basically the same frequency. We just don't watch the other teams in the league the same amount that we're watching the Bills.
I think that's a huge point. So, Kevin, bouncing it back over to you, what are your opinions on the overall state of the NFL offenses? You have Mahomes relying on his defense more now than ever. He has more turnover-worthy plays than Josh. You have Hurts struggling against a similar style of defense that the Bills have had to go against in the AFC East as well. You have Purdy not being able to get anything done when Christian McCaffrey goes off the field. You have a pretty poor state of offense right now around the league. And, I think the hyper focus right now is who's calling the plays. But maybe there's an influx of defense. Maybe that there's people trying to figure out these elite level quarterbacks. Millions and millions and millions of dollars being spent per team analytically, eye test wise, scouting wise, to stop these offenses when you have Josh Allen, that you have some of these coaches that are going off onto new teams, knowing because they're getting hired because of these franchise quarterbacks like Dable, maybe like some of the other the Eagles had 2 coaches being hired off of their roster, etc. What is your opinion, Kevin, on just the state of the league and offense? Does that play a role into this at all? And you have to account for, like, Josh Allen is going to be who Josh Allen is at some point. Like, we can swap out Ken Dorsey. There was plenty of people on this world after a 3-5 stretch from week 16 to week 14 in 2021, the year that everyone thinks the Bills should have won the Super Bowl. 3-5 stretch. It was not great. You had a even worse performance against Jacksonville offensively, and you had a ton of issues in games during that stretch. They got boat raced, and that's something that you don't see right now. So, Kevin, what's your opinion on all of that as you kind of look at the state of the league and kind of put some context behind, like, where the Bills are at in 2021?
Well, to your guys' point, I think that it needs to be said that the defense is still going to make plays, because as much as this is an offensive-driven league, that's not to say for the next 50 years it's going to be offense, 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 offense. The defense is going to figure out how to punch back, but what the offense has to do is throw another counter punch. So the latest trend was you put the 2 high safeties, and now you have to work on working underneath. So defenses are constantly making adjustments, and that's why it's on the offense to throw that counter punch back and say, okay, we're going to be ahead of the curve because defenses are starting to defend us this way. So going back to how I opened this up, that's why it's on Ken Dorsey to figure out the guys that he has on his roster to scheme them open. Guys like Trent Sherfield, Khalil Shakir, Deontay Hardy, Dalton Kincaid. There was so much hype around Kincaid. All we heard about all summer, Cole Beasley 2.0. Maybe he's the next coming of Travis Kelce. He's so smooth and fluid, and his hips and his hands, he catches everything. Well, where's that been? So I think it starts with Dorsey. He has to put his players in better positions to scheme them open. But again, I want to talk about Josh here, because this is a perfect example where Dorsey called the right play, and it was a beautiful design where Khalil Shakir acted like he was going to run block or just block in general, and then he leaked out. So I have the clip right here, or at least a screenshot, where you can see Shakir at the top of the screen with that arrow, and that's Diggs in that triangle. And Josh forced it in to double, triple coverage when he could have had Shakir for an easy first down. So again, I think it's very easy to say, oh, well, Ken Dorsey is such a terrible play caller. And, to those people's credit, you can find a lot of plays where it's like, why would you call that? But on the other side, this is on Josh right here, because he did not recognize that Shakir was wide open. And I was sitting in the stands with my friend, and we pointed that out. And somewhere around the same time, Dick came over to Allen with the iPad, and he showed him something. It was a 5-second conversation, and he walked away. And I was wondering if he was saying, dude, I was triple teamed. We had Khalil open for a first down.